University in Japan was one of the best decisions I made, but moving to a new country and finishing university in a foreign country, that's hard. So how did I do it? In high school, I was a pretty introverted kid. I didn't really want to be around people at school, and I just wanted to go home and play some games. So my grades, they weren't the best, but they were all right. I was probably like a B+ average student. So I had a friend who I often ate lunch with, and he was gonna go to Japan. And he introduced me to this program called YFU, which is kind of like a foreign exchange program. And in his family, everybody had already gone on this. They all used this program. So he told me about it, and he convinced me like, hey, you should try to go to Japan with me. It would be really cool. He pretty much convinced me to go to Japan with him. So I ended up Googling it, and I found the YFU website, and it seemed like it would be an amazing experience. Before that point, I had never thought about leaving America. I always thought I would just live in the US and I'd always be in the US. I could have never imagined that I would go to another country or what it would be like to go to another country. So while looking at other exchange programs, I found they were all way too expensive for me. One semester or 1 year was around $10,000 and I had no money. So I was checking out all the countries. I didn't really care which country I went to. Japan sounded cool, but any place sounded cool to me at that time. But for Japan, there was a 6-week option in the summer that I could do, and I could get a scholarship for it that would make the cost only $3,000, which is about as expensive as an expensive plane ticket to Japan. So I decided I would try it out, and I ended up getting the scholarship. So the next thing I needed was to get some money. I ended up raising some money. All sorts of people, friends, family, gave me the money I needed, and it was so amazing. They helped me so much to go on this amazing experience. I couldn't have done it without the support of my family. I was able to just barely get enough money before the deadline. It was close, I almost didn't make it. I ended up going to a place called Ehime. It's in a very rural part of Japan on the island of Shikoku. There were lots of rice. It's so rural that there's kind of rice fields everywhere in the town I stayed. This experience was the first time I left the US. It was really nerve-wracking and I was always nervous. And in the place I stayed, called Saijo, there were very few English speakers and I didn't know Japanese. So with my host family, Google Translate became my best friend because they didn't know English and I didn't know Japanese. So I always used just gestures and Google Translate. But like Google Translate, definitely at the time, it had a lot more errors than it does now. It still has errors and it's definitely not something you should rely on. But so this exchange made me want to come back to Japan and really live here because I really liked the way of life in Japan. So my host sister, she was a student at APU, and that was the school I went to. So I talked with her and my host family to learn more about the school, and I ended up just Googling the school and doing some more research, and it sounded perfect because I can learn some Japanese but also study in English. So I can get my bachelor's in English but at the same time learn the language. So I ended up getting back from my exchange and starting my senior year. This meant that I need to start applying for schools to choose where I'm gonna go to college. So I ended up doing a lot of research on the different types of schools you can go to in Japan, and definitely the cheapest was just a Japanese public university, but I would have to know Japanese, and I could have gone to a 2-year Japanese language school and then go to a Japanese university, but that would take 6 years to get my bachelor's, and though I would be fluent in Japanese, I was thinking some other options might be better for me. So there were a couple of other options for international schools. There was Temple University, Japan in Tokyo, and there was Ritsumeikan, APU. There's I think a couple others, you can all look at them up. I wanted to go to APU because I thought the very multicultural environment would be good, and I didn't really want to live in Tokyo yet because it seemed like too big of a town for me because I'm just from the suburbs of Utah, so definitely too much city for me at that point. I had to apply for the fall semester of 2016 for after I graduated, and that was definitely a very frustrating process. Applying to the school is frustrating because Japanese institutions like to have original or official documents of everything. And I was getting a visa as well, so I had to submit like my passport copy too. And the hardest thing was actually my diploma because they want an original copy or official copy. And in America, the diplomas, they only give you one diploma. And I asked my school, can we just photocopy it and put a stamp? Because they would accept that if you just take a photocopy, stamp it with the school stamp, totally okay. But my school refused to do that. And that was so frustrating. So I ended up actually just sending my original document. My original diploma, I sent it, and I could get it back once I came to Japan, but that was really frustrating and pretty nerve-wracking too, because I don't know what something could happen into it. Because we have to mail everything. All these documents I had to physically mail. They don't want to take emails. So that was definitely one of the hardest parts, because you have to be very aware of how long it takes to send something to Japan, because time is definitely important, especially with the deadline for the application. I couldn't pay for the first semester because I couldn't afford it at that time. The initial costs were too high for me at that moment, and I didn't really have much of a savings. So I applied again for the spring semester of the following year, of 2017 spring. So in the beginning, you don't need to worry about the visa yet, just because you have to get in. Once you get into the school, then you can start the visa process. I think I had to send all my stuff to the nearest consulate. I had to send like my passport and some paper that the school gave me called a certificate of eligibility, which is what makes you eligible for a student visa. After that, you pay the initial fees. So to prepare, I was studying Japanese for 9 months and working full-time. So I first started working full-time at a restaurant, but that work definitely got really tiring after a couple months, because it was a fast food style restaurant. So I got a job as a canvasser part-time and then changed to part-time at the restaurant too. The door-to-door canvassing job paid a lot more and definitely was a lot more relaxing than the restaurant. Then I worked for UPS for 3 months during the Christmas to help pay for my tuition, because it was definitely a lot more consistent income, because it was full-time at the call center. That was definitely a really stressful job. I don't really want to do call center work again, but I ended up saving enough money that I could pay for my tuition and pay for my plane tickets. So I ended up going. All I had to do was wait. So once I got there, I had such an amazing experience at school. I made so many friends and from all over the world. I learned so much about just all different cultures and different people and ways of thinking. They became kind of like a family to me. During school, I actually always had to work, because I had to pay for some of my tuition and I had to pay for my living expenses. So I always did school and work as an English teacher. English teaching jobs typically pay a lot higher than other part-time work. I had to pay for my food and my housing with my English teaching job. So definitely not all fun and games. And I could not have done it without all the help from my family, the love and support my family gave me. I truly appreciate everything everybody has done for me to help me on my journey. I'm so grateful for all the help I've received. So even though there's definitely been hard parts, it's been one of the best decisions and led me on this amazing journey in my life to just live in another country and experience just meeting people and just living all on my own. I could not have imagined living on the other side of the world in high school. So for anybody out there who just needs the motivation to try something, to just live in another country, or just try something that you are afraid of, something new, something different, I would recommend just going for it. Even if it's just something temporary, who knows? It can really change your life, your perspective, and be a really mind-opening experience. And so if you guys want to check out some crazy tips for when you come to Japan, click this video and see you guys.